Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko number 101-722. This is an oil-rubbed brass. It's made of architectural bronze. It will be called solid brass. Oil-rubbed bronze brass threshold cap is what this is. This is just a 6-inch sample piece for purposes of this video, and is certainly a valuable video because it's representative of what this oil-rubbed finish will look like. And as you can see, as I turn it around and the light reflects it differently, it goes from looking quite dark, although some people might say that looks black. Well, it's really not black when you hold it up against something that is black, even though admittedly it looks quite dark compared to something that's knowingly black. You know, that's a bit more at the top of the unit. It's a bit more of an accurate reflection of the finish. You get to a point where it's like, yeah, it's not black, and you can see the warmer tone come through ever so slightly as the light hits it differently. So this is made of solid, what we would call architectural bronze, but it's very commonly known as just simply solid brass. A little bit of evidence is on the back side of that you can see, that lighter area back there. They would really have no reason to finish the bottom side of the unit in particular, except they would need to kind of treat that because technically that back side is going to be exposed. But this is what you're going to see. Okay. This is a threshold cap is what it is what they call it. If this was the genuine article, there would be some holes drilled and countersunk down the length of the unit. Now, this can cap onto an existing threshold. It could be a cap to something existing, or it could be a standalone threshold, although while that's not unheard of, it might be a bit unusual only because that's quite short. It's not very, its height is only 5/16 of an inch. Now, this would be used with a hook strip, is what you would use this with. When you purchase the 101, you're going to get a hook strip included automatically. I don't have, when I asked the factory for a sample of this, they sent me a sample of this. You would get a hook strip from them that would also be brass. This happens to be the steel version of the same hook strip. This just happens to be wipe coat galvanized steel. Yours, when you order a 101 in a B, mill finish, polished satin, oil rubbed, it would be a brass hook strip as well. But since I don't have that at hand, I'm just going to show you the concept of how this works. Works just like that. So this is an interlocking threshold is really what it is. And that's what it will look like when that door comes and closes. It's going to hook right into that threshold, just like that. Okay? Now, you might have an existing threshold and you want to turn it into an interlocking threshold. There you go, 101B. You might have an application where you want an interlocking threshold where you might have an enclosed screen area. You have an outside door to your house, but it leads to a screened-in area. And the door swings in, and there's a wood floor on the inside and a very tight margin underneath. And because it goes exterior, even though it's screened in, you're still going to have the propensity for, you know, insect intrusion, etc. And you might say to yourself, yeah, I want an interlocking threshold. I want to keep things from getting in there. So if you've got a really small undercut, say 7/16 of an inch, to the underside of the door to what you're going to place this on top of, this would be a very good candidate because in that application, you may not want such a tall or large threshold that you're going to have to step over. So the 101, whether it be made of brass or it be made of just simply an aluminum extrusion, the concept is very solid because it's a mechanically interlocked interface between the door and the frame. And yes, of course, you guessed it, the hook strip, we call it a J-hook sometimes. If you use your imagination, you can see why we would call it a J-hook. Okay, gets nailed to the bottom of the door. It's that simple. The overall height of this It's about 1/4 inch. And as we study the edge of this, you know, you're really going to want that lip of that threshold to come right in the center of that unit, at about 1/8 of an inch, I would say. Okay. So if, and I'm not saying that that's your final dimension, if we want that bird's mouth opening to come at 1/8 of an inch, you can take that overall height, subtract the balance, and you'll have your underside of the door to the floor dimension. You want that to come right in the center of that leading edge. Okay. Now, why would you want one made of bronze? Well, versus aluminum. Well, you might be building a $3 million house, and you might be upgrading all of the material on a home like that. So you're going to see solid brass thresholds in hyper expensive homes, in very heavy duty applications, 5-star hotels. They're going to have brass thresholds. The doors leading into the Chicago City Hall, all solid brass thresholds. Think the end scene of the Blues Brothers where they're running into the building. That's City Hall. So that threshold that they run over, that's not that you would see the threshold ever, but that's the building. Solid brass thresholds on the exterior of that building. Okay, so it would be for the integrity of the material. And you'll notice that there is some marks on my finger, and that's because this is oil rubbed, meaning it's rubbed with oil. If I were to continue to rub that, I'm going to take some of the oil with me, and it'll be on my hand. So I'm not touching this because I don't want to get my fingerprints on it and mar the finish of the unit. So you'll use architectural bronze base material when the project calls for it, but also the durability of the material. Those bronze or brass thresholds on the Chicago City Hall building, they're there because they've been there for decades. It's the durability. An aluminum threshold would never contend with the amount of foot traffic that certainly goes over those thresholds on a daily basis. Okay, so this is listed in lots of different lengths. 2 foot to 8 foot are probably listed. You can have really any size you want. We're only limited by the length of the extrusion. And this extrusion may be, 16.5 feet for all I know at the factory. I want to measure this so that I give you all of the dimensions. Overall width, about 1 1/8 inches, and that's what they call it out as. 5/16 overall height, sure, very short little guy here. Okay. Now, again, this is a sample piece. If this was the genuine article, you'd have a brass hook strip. You'd have holes drilled and countersunk, and generally, as a general rule, not an absolute rule, for every foot that you have, you'll have, for whatever length you have, if it's a 3-foot piece, you'll probably have 4 holes drilled and countersunk. You'll have screws that will be in a complementary finish, and in this case, it would be brass screws as well. So be very mindful of that brass screw, very soft base material. If you have need for a custom length, by all means, order the next longest piece or pieces, and simply indicate in the comment field the length that you'd like for us to cut the material back to. And that's what we'll do. The reasoning is, look at the end of that. Very clean cut factory edge, and it's finished. You go ahead and you cut that. You may not have the best tool for cutting this, and you likely won't have the ability to finish that edge off. Not that you would ever see it, but you could, you might, and you might just want the factory to give you a nice finished edge as well. Okay. Let's switch to the screen view where we can take a closer look at some supporting concepts. Here is the item that we are looking at now. Admittedly, this is just a 24-inch length, but doesn't really matter. Here are our dimensional properties of this item. Okay. Brass, oxidized, and oil rubbed. The J-hook included when purchasing the 101. Typically mounted on an existing saddle type threshold to create an interlock with a J-hook or an L-hook, and we're going to talk about both of those here in a moment. I do have some images that I can show you. That's what it looks like up close, cross section. My sample did have a little bit of a nick on it on the corner. You can see that brass tone underneath it. Okay, so now the item that we are looking at here, there is a link here to the manufacturer's page. When we click on that, we'll be able to pull up not only all of the Pemko products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as the catalog. So let's open up the catalog, because I want to draw your attention to what the hook strip is, the J and the L, the 101. Just doing a find function on our keyboard where we can get to that interlock style threshold, and there it is. Okay, so that's what it looks like in the catalog. The 2019 catalog has it on page 288. So this section is residential thresholds. That is generally where you will see it, and that's a great image showing what the installation would look like. Having a drip cap is really low-hanging fruit as well. I would always recommend the inclusion of a drip cap. You can see that there is this more flat profile that they have here, and then a taller version in the 107. Other interlocking thresholds are also here, and here's the page I wanted to draw your attention to. The J hook is the B61. That would be the appropriate part number for this item. An L hook would be a 66B. Okay, so where would you use that L hook? Well, let's illustrate where we would probably use it. Sorry, I am an awful artist. That's to be sure. So that's our 101. So you can have your door. So as we showed in this image here, you get the concept of how that's going to install. Okay, but that's only one way of doing it, and in fact, that's the less common way. So you can certainly install it like they're showing here, where your hook comes around like this, roughly speaking. Now, most people are just going to install it like this. That's really how you see it. But to make a mortise in the bottom of the door is a lot more elegant. Better way to end up doing that. Okay, so however you go about doing it is how you go about doing it. What's nice about it is it will draw that door down further and render a more effective overall seal. Okay, because it's not just straight across at this point. Now that L hook would really only be done like this. Okay, you nail it here. You do see them. They're unsightly in the sense that once you see that L hook, it's hard to forget that you saw it, where the J hook is clearly concealed. But that's where the L hook goes, and your door obviously swings in that direction. No real opportunity to mortise the bottom of your door like that when you're doing an L hook. Okay, adding that drip cap out here is a really great idea, because any water that hits that, it's just forced away. Okay, rather than stopping it here, you're stopping it here. Be advantageous. Let's take a look at the drip cap. Let's search for, I think it's 345 is going to be the part number for that, I think. I think we may have just blown past it. It's not 345. Just waiting on the document to index. Okay, Pemko calls it a range rip. And they certainly come integrated with door bottoms and sweeps, as you see. Here's the here's the unit that goes over the top of the door. That is a drip cap itself. But the one that will go at the bottom of the door And the part number is definitely 345. I've been able to find it in my site. Very strange. Here it is. Forgive me, I've blown past it. Right here, 345. So you can do a 345 and a B base material for brass, and then do an oil rub bronze on it so it matches. Okay, that'd be a great option. What they're showing there. The rest of the catalog, of course, is very handy for you to review all things Pemko related. Let's wrap up this video on camera. And I do happen to have a 66B, that L hook. And here it is. Okay, so it'd be a great way to show you what that might look like. Obviously, just like that is going to be the idea. Okay, very heavy piece of brass that's here as well. The name Pemko is quite synonymous with all things weather stripping related. Not only thresholds that are interlocking in style, but interlocking perimeter gasketing as well. Thresholds, perimeter gasketing, door sweeps, a variety of other items. They are under the umbrella of Assa Abloy, and Pemko's sister companies would be companies like Adams Wright, Rockwood, Sargent, Medico, Corbin Russwin, Yale, Norton, etc., etc., etc. Lots of companies. Assa Abloy is a European company in origin, so they'll have a giant footprint here, but also in Europe as well. One of the three large multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations that are really all vying for all of the top-level work that's occurring within the industry. Any questions on the Pemko 101 in a oil rub bronze finish, an architectural bronze base material, or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.